There are thousands of players at the FBS level. If you were asked to name the best player in the country, who would you likely say? Bryce Young, Will Anderson, Kenneth Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, Kenny Pickett, CJ Stroud are all some names that you'd likely guess. But those names are all wrong. The greatest player in college football in 2021 wasn't a quarterback or a running back. He didn't play defense either. The best player in college football this season was San Diego State punter Matt Araiza. And yes, I'm being 100% serious. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed. So make sure to join the community here for more college football content. Also, if you could take a second and drop a like on this video, I would greatly appreciate it. Every like this video gets helps the algorithm of the video and helps share it with more college football fans. This season, Matt Araiza had the greatest season we've ever seen from a punter at the collegiate level. He set a number of records that we likely won't see broken for some time. It's not a stretch to say that he's the greatest punter in the history of college football. His own head coach has called him the MVP of San Diego State, and he's 100% serious. The Aztecs just finished the season with 12 wins, the most in the history of their program, and it was largely due to their punter. Unfortunately, due to copyright, I won't be able to show highlights in this video, but if you'd like to see clips of how far his punts go watch them on YouTube, and I guarantee you'll be shocked. So I know what you're asking, who the hell is Matt Araiza, and why is he the best player in all of college football? Well, his journey goes all the way back to when he was 5 years old. He was born and raised in San Diego. His father would have him go through soccer drills like one-touch passes and shots from different angles and positions over and over again with both of his legs. At a very young age, Matt was kicking balls further than anyone his age, even kids that were a few years older than him. To no surprise, his main interest wasn't soccer. Given the gift of his legs, it just made the most sense. However, by the time he got to high school, he'd already been kicking footballs for fun at local parks and was considering giving football a shot. When Araiza was younger, his brother took him out to a local field with some footballs and just let him kick as many times as he wanted. Matt said that after kicking only 3 balls, his brother told him that he was going to play in the NFL. But Matt didn't really have that in his vision. He thought that he was going to play soccer overseas in Europe, so that was his goal for a long time growing up. It didn't take long for the coaches to realize they had something special in Matt Araiza. At just 14 years old, he was draining field goals from beyond 40 yards. The coaches gave him a shot on the team, and little did they know they'd have a future superstar on their hands. In 2015, he broke the San Diego sectional record for field goals in a single season. His high school, Rancho Bernardo, won a state championship, and he was named to the Max Prep Sophomore All-America team. He was the San Diego sectional kicker of the year in all 3 years he kicked, and he broke the county record for career field goals. He was the best kicker in the city and was pretty much one of the best kickers in the entire country, but Matt Araiza didn't have the scholarships rolling in from the top teams in the country. At the end of his senior season, he hadn't gotten one single scholarship offer, and he was still considering soccer as his future. There ended up being 2 FBS offers that rolled in: UMass and San Diego State. San Diego State special teams coach Doug Deacon first watched Araiza as a high school prospect on tape when he was an operations assistant at San Diego State. He was impressed, and the Aztecs didn't hesitate in sending him an offer. Ultimately, Araiza opted to remain close to home and committed to San Diego State. During his freshman and sophomore years, Araiza was put in charge of place kicking and kickoffs. Now, I know what you're thinking. He's the greatest punter we've ever seen in college football, and he wasn't even punting the first 2 years? Don't worry, we'll get there. Araiza set a school record for made field goals in a season with 22 and ranked 6th in the nation in touchback percentage in 2019. In 2020, Araiza took over punting duties for San Diego State in the first game against UNLV. He punted 5 times with a long of 58 yards and an average of just under 50 yards. However, that would be all he'd punt for the year. Through his first 2 seasons at San Diego State, he had only 5 punts under his belt. Then, entering the 2021 season, Araiza was named as the do-it-all kicker for the Aztecs. He'd be handling kickoffs, field goals, PATs, and now punts for San Diego State. He became one of only 4 players in the entire country that handled duties for all of them. But he wasn't sure if he'd be able to handle all that pressure. He said that he worked harder than he ever had in his life during that offseason. He didn't overwork his leg or add more kicking to his routines, but he made sure that every kick mattered. I remember texting my dad and telling him that I want this more than I've ever wanted anything in my life, and I think that mentality and that drive helped me a lot. He had himself quite the 2021 debut. Araiza punted the ball 9 times and averaged a school record 56.8 yards per punt. 6 of them went at least 50 yards, one off the NCAA record for the most in a single game. His longest punts went 77 and 75 yards, giving him the 2 longest punts on the season in the NCAA. The following week on the road at Arizona, he punted 7 times, averaging 53 yards a punt. His long was only 66 yards though. Then, the next game against Utah, he drained a field goal from 51 yards out. He also punted 10 times with an average distance of 54 yards and a long of 77 yards. This wasn't just a hot start to his season. Araiza was doing this on nearly every punt. His leg was legit, and he was quickly emerging as the best punter in the entire country. Araiza has said that he wants to punt the ball as far as he can and dare the opponent to go get it. He's betting that they can't, and even if they do, he's still going to come out ahead. Now, what if the ball rolls into the end zone? Well, Matt Araiza isn't concerned about that at all. The common thought that a touchback is a bad thing as a punter is totally wrong. It's a situational thing. If you're trying to pin them inside the 5 and it's a pooch-style punt, then yeah, that would be a bad ball. But when you're netting 60 yards on a ball that goes into the end zone, that's not a bad thing at all. That is almost the same thing as hitting a 60-yard ball out of bounds. In terms of the net, it's the exact same thing, and a 60-yard ball out of bounds. If you can do that every game, you'd be the best punter in history. Araiza just kept shattering records on a week-to-week basis. He was named the Mountain West Special Teams Player nearly every week of the season. In October, he was named to the AP Mid-Season Second-Team All-American team. At that point in the year, he had been averaging 54 yards a punt. He had 25 punts that went at least 50 yards, 18 that were pinned inside the 20, 8 fair catches, and a long of 86 yards, posting a net punt average of 46.2. The ball comes off my foot, and let's say it's only in the air for about 4.3 seconds. That's what I've been averaging recently. And so maybe a second in, 2 seconds is when they can really tell, okay, this is going to go far. So that gives them, maybe 2 or 3 seconds to run back 15 yards and find the ball and have their balance, so that when they catch it, they can move forward. And you just don't see that on a lot of my balls. They can't catch them, and if they catch them, they're kind of off balance because they're running back or losing it in the air. So I would say that's my biggest place where I disagree with the convention of punting, is this whole, oh, hang time is amazing, it's super necessary, and all this stuff. I don't know, there's situations where you don't need it so much. Entering November, he already had 14 punts of at least 60 yards, 2 shy of the NCAA record. He had 28 punts of 50 yards, 4 shy of the NCAA record. He was averaging 54 yards a punt, which would smash the NCAA and NFL records of 51 yards. Even if we factor in returns and touchbacks, he was still on pace for history. His net punting average of 46.7 yards was the most since the NCAA started including touchbacks in net punting average. No team had ever exceeded 45. There had been only one 80-plus yard punt in the NFL in 2021. Before that, the last one came all the way back in 2013. Araiza had as many 80-yard-plus punts in a 2-week span as every punter in the NFL had over the last 10 seasons combined. A Pro Football Focus analyst in mid-November estimated that the difference between Araiza's punts and an average punt had generated almost 3 touchdowns worth of value for San Diego State, which was the most in all of college football going back for at least 6 years. Now just listen to how crazy this truly is. San Diego State won 12 games this season. Their offense was horrible. They averaged the 75th most points per game in all of college football. So they were near the bottom half in offense, but yet they were one of the winningest teams in all of the country. They scored more than 40 points only once. They scored 23 points or less 6 times. They were averaging less than 350 yards a game. This is an offense that should not have won 12 games. But they did because of Matt Araiza's leg. If San Diego State didn't score, the opposing defense would likely have awful field position. They'd have to drive at least 80 yards majority of the time. Now, San Diego State did have a solid defense, but when the opposing team is consistently pinned, there's nothing their offense can really do. Many people considered Araiza to be the MVP of the team. He was completely impacting the game with his leg. He was giving the opponent awful field position on every punt. They were either starting on the 5 to 10 yard line, or the absolute worst, they'd be starting at the 25 yard line. Araiza called kicking a football really hard the greatest feeling. Although he handles all the kicking duties, punting is by far his favorite. Some games you get a bunch of short field goals. With the new changes to the touchback rules, pretty much every kickoff is a touchback. It isn't much of a challenge anymore. Punting, you go out there and you swing as hard as you want. Araiza generated an average hang time of 4 seconds, above the national average of 3.86 seconds. He just doesn't think he needs to prevent punt returners from finding the ball and running it back. And the stats back him up. Just 27.4% of his punts yielded any return at all. That means that on a huge chunk of his punts, returners simply weren't tracking the ball down and weren't catching it for a chance to return it. Araiza's punts that were returned averaged only 10.8 yards. Now that was above the average of 8 yards, but considering where the returner is starting from, it doesn't really mean anything at all. The average field position after punt returns against Araiza was on the opposing team's 19.8 yard line. So that means even though they were returning punts, they still were only getting it to about the 20-yard line, which was by far the best in all of the country. As the season progressed, he started gaining national attention. He was having feature stories written about him. He was also trending on Twitter with a bunch of people giving him the nickname Punt God. Araiza was even given his own segment on ESPN's College Game Day. All of that stuff is crazy to me. I didn't expect to be getting this much attention for kicking. But if I can be a little piece of a change in the narrative about what everyone thinks a kicker and punter is, I'll be happy with that. To no surprise, Araiza was named the recipient of the 2021 Ray Guy Award, which goes to the best punter in the country. He set NCAA records with 39 punts that traveled at least 50 yards, and a record of 18 punts that went at least 60 yards. He had the longest punt of the season, going 86 yards, along with punts that went 81, 79, 77, 75, and 72 yards. I don't think there was a record for most 70-yard punts in a season, but if there is, he definitely shattered that as well. In addition to all those numbers, he became the first punter in college football history to receive a Heisman Trophy vote. No, seriously, a Heisman Trophy voter gave him a third-place vote. All that was left was one more record for him to break. San Diego State was set to face UTSA in their bowl game, with Araiza being on the verge of setting the college football record for the longest punt average in a single season. In what was likely his final game of his college football career, he went out with a bang. He finished the season with an average of 53.19 yards per punt, breaking the record that was set by Brandon Mann from Texas A&M in 2018. For his final game, he nailed his only field goal attempt and was 5 for 5 on extra points. It's not a stretch to say that that was the greatest season we've ever seen from a college football punter, because it was, and we might not ever see one like it. At the time of this video, he hasn't declared for the NFL draft, but it would make sense for him to capitalize after this incredible season. We don't usually see punters taken in the NFL draft. Every year there might be one or two, but they're usually selected later in the draft. We've seen some go in the mid-rounds over the last few years, but it's not very common. Only 2 punters have ever gone in the first round of the NFL draft, and one of them was Ray Guy, who many consider to be the greatest punter of all time. With the way the game is today, it's tough to see a team willingly taking a punter in the first round. Although, it would be freaking awesome if one did. I know this may be a hot take, but getting a punter like Araiza definitely should be worth using a top 50 or 60 pick on him. I know a lot of people like to joke about punters and kickers, but having a good one is insanely valuable, especially one that looks like a generational player in Matt Araiza. I mean, imagine having the luxury of pinning your opponent inside the 10-yard line at nearly any given time, regardless of where you are on the field. Again, I know this may be a hot take, but if I have a team that's already really good everywhere else, I would take Araiza with a late first-round pick or an early second-round pick. Regardless of what happens with his NFL career, we truly witnessed something special this season in college football. The record-breaking numbers he put up were amazing, and I got no problem calling him the greatest punter of all time. So, what are your thoughts on Matt Araiza and the season he just had? Do you think he's the greatest punter in the history of college football? Do you think that a team should take him early in the NFL draft? Well, whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to the channel. If you love college football, then this is definitely the place for you. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, as it helps the algorithm of the video and helps share with more college football fans. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.